predator, that is nothing. I mean, they don't even bat an eye with that. They gave him, and I knew this was a terrible mistake. I knew it was. I just had a gut feeling. I found out that the day I was in court, the police knew more about him than they later admitted. They had done some digging and found out that he had been known in Texas as the ski mask rapist of San Antonio. But they were willing to basically tell him to go sin no more, be a good boy, and just give him the suspended sentence, which wasn't worth the paper it was written on. He basically hit the ground running and just kept on and kept on. And it, like I said, it took 3 years before he was really brought to justice. It was a mess, and a lot of children did not have to be victimized. And a lot of that was completely preventable. They did not take his DNA, just a lot of things. And I realize the police have an impossible job to do. But a single DNA test when he had attempted this with my children would have revealed an assault he had done in the same neighborhood against a 5-year-old years earlier and would have locked him up then. But they didn't do it, which I will never know why.
I know. It seems like they have a lot of time, pulling people over, and,
Yes.
Doing a lot of oppressive tactics here. And first of all, give the audience an idea of how many rapes this guy is alleged to have committed in his life, his career.
Okay, when he was in San Antonio, Texas in the early 80s, his own defense attorney, a man named Ray Taylor, admitted on 2020, ABC's 2020, his defense attorney admitted that Smith was linked to at least 200 rapes and molestations in San Antonio. And that's what the defense attorney tells the major media, so that's telling you something. When he came to Richmond, the police here linked him to at least 86 cases. And as I'm sure you know, it's such an underreported crime that one day, I'm sure you know who John Walsh is.
Sure.
I was talking to John Walsh about this, and he said, Polly, you could easily put at least 1 or 2 zeros behind this number, meaning that he was linked to thousands, if not tens of thousands, of crimes, because he was in his mid-40s, and he admitted he'd been doing this since he was about 11 years old. So
at the time he made it to Richmond, Virginia, and he came to contact with your family, had he had prior convictions and arrests prior to that?
Oh, yes. He like I said, it had been a major trial back in '83 in San Antonio. The public there was furious. It had been on 60 Minutes. It had been received major media at the time because people were outraged there that they would give him such a light sentence. They gave him probation for what he had done, which was just, I will never wrap my brain around that. And they decided to treat him and send him to Johns Hopkins, to a sex offender treatment facility where he was supposed to be getting chemical castration injections and all of this. So he had a record already. But like I said, he didn't come up on my radar as being suspicious, and I didn't know until I had reason to really dig into it because the information, frankly, wasn't really available. But he spent 1 month inpatient at Johns Hopkins and was supposed to be receiving these shots for another 10 years. Now, meanwhile, while he's getting these shots of Depo-Provera injection, which is a female contraceptive, but they're giving it to him to reduce his sex drive, if I can say that on your show.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And so it was supposed to make him non-functioning, basically. And so he married his nurse that he met there, and they moved to Richmond in my neighborhood. And during this time when he's taking these injections, he fathers 2 children. So something's working. Hello.
Right.
And nothing was done. And the psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins released him early from the program because he said he'd been such a good patient. And had a letter written to him said to report by mail if he had any problems. Now, it's like, okay, send us a postcard if you assault anybody.
Right. Well, Polly, also, too, if you're saying that he married his nurse from that facility, don't you think she's working there every day? She's friends. She socializes with these doctors, the administrators. They're all friends. They all hang out smoking breaks all the time, talking. You see the constant. I see how much work they do. Do you think maybe she had some influence to get him off that probation?
I don't know, because this was a few years later, and they had already moved down to Richmond.
Right.
So I don't know if she did or not. But once he left, for instance, once he left San Antonio, he was just a name and a file for them. Once he left Johns Hopkins, again, he was just a file. And so there was no following up, despite his crime spree that put him on 60 Minutes and 2020 back in the 80s. No follow-up. And so, and they even had an article in the San Antonio paper where he had fathered this child here in Richmond. Nothing was done. That didn't raise any red flags with anybody. It was so ludicrous. It would be funny if the results weren't so horrible.
Polly, if he was ordered 10 years of this chemical castration treatment, there was no supervision, there was no parole, no probation, nothing associated with that?
Yes, he was, but they didn't follow through. They did not follow through. I have no idea why. San Antonio was obviously thrilled to be rid of him.
Right.
And so I guess they just figured he was someone else's problem at that point. And since he hadn't been caught doing anything else, they decided that his own attorney back in '83 was bragging that this man is completely cured now. He is not a rapist anymore. He has completely changed, and everything is wonderful.
That's true. Just think about it. San Antonio, Texas is a rather small town, okay? I know you said before that you felt that Richmond, Virginia was a large town. I kind of laughed at that coming from New York and Las Vegas, okay? I kind of chuckled a bit. But San Antonio is a small town, and if they have this one offender that's costing, he's got treatment and some medical facility, follow-up with, medical injections, all this kind of stuff, I could see them wanting to get rid of him and not wanting him back and not violating him and just being glad to be rid of that expense. People have no idea. These small towns, they can't afford a troublesome parolee or probationer. Hey. Now,
well, yeah, I mean, he even had to go. It's just one of these ludicrous things that you hear. But he was actually, after the trial in San Antonio, they had to hide him because the community was so outraged at the verdict that he was given probation after he had basically tormented this neighborhood in San Antonio for years. There was so much outrage. And so they, ironically, did a far better job protecting him than they did any of the victims.
And how was he employed over his lifetime, his career?
He was a truck driver, and he had routes all over the country. And so I suspect he had victims literally from sea to shining sea.
Yeah.
Because he would make us leave. Just the lifestyle itself, and this is nothing against truck drivers by any means, but the lifestyle of the job meant that he could do any number of violations, any number of things, and be out of town the next day and out of state. So I agree with John Wilson that he probably had tens of thousands of victims.
Did he ever make any kind of confession or grant interviews of his life story and what he was up to?
After he was in prison, he was on 2020. The major media picked it up again after this happened in Richmond.
Right.
The Washington Post put Thanksgiving that year announced that San Antonio ski mask rapist was also Richmond's bandana bandit. And so that brought in the national media, Dateline 2020, and all of that. And he did an interview for 2020 from prison, and he did a lot of crying about how hard his life had been.
Did he confess to any more crimes he wasn't charged of?
Oh, no.
And he died in prison, right?
No, he's still alive.
Oh,
he's
really?
there.
Oh, I thought I saw that he died. I thought I saw he passed on. Okay, that's interesting.
Not that I know of. Not that tell me.
Okay. Well, I just did a simple Google search on him. Now, have you ever been in contact? You wrote a book about him. Have you ever talked to him?
Oh, not since before I knew what he'd done.
Right.
No, absolutely not. I mean, my blood pressure didn't need it.
Yeah.
And I knew that he would lie and cry and deny and again try to make things sound like this really isn't as bad as it sounds, the type of thing that many of them do. And so I was able to get information without having to go to visit him, and I never will. His prison is about 300 miles from where I live, and so he's not worth the trip, frankly.
And what about the co-author of Devil at My Door, Ted Schwartz? Did he ever contact this offender?
No, he didn't. No. And there was plenty in the public information, plus my own experience, that we were able to track down and get tapes from San Antonio and all of that. The information was ready available once the technology was in place.
Now, your family wasn't actually harmed. It was just the attempt.
Right. Well, he tried to break into my daughter's bedroom,
Right.
who was 15, and then he tried to assault my 8 and 9-year-old. And by the grace of God, his wife caught him in the middle of the night.
Now, let me ask you a question. Then, the night when his wife caught him, was he wearing a ski mask or a bandana on that night?
No, he wasn't wearing anything.
No. And then, but when he tried to break into the window there of the daughter's room, was he wearing a ski mask that night?
No, he wasn't. His MO in Texas was a ski mask, and then in Virginia it was primarily just a bandana over his face. He would wear a bandana and nothing else. And that particular night, my daughter heard a noise outside her room and thought it was her father out there, and happened to see a man with a baseball cap on. So he wasn't always completely, stringent about his MO. But fortunately, she saw him before anything happened. Thank God.
And she recognized him right away.
Oh no, she did not at first.
No.
Not at first. But we put two and two together, and he had been apparently circling around, eyeing my children for quite some time, and we didn't know that, which was very hard to deal with later because I used to consider myself to be a very shrewd judge of character, and he flew in right under my radar.
But you wouldn't be the first, and you wouldn't be the last, unfortunately. People, especially these kind of really devious folks, if you can go out and commit this number of crimes and with impunity, with no fear, just think, you try and snatch some bubble gum at the grocery store, you're terrified, your heart's pumping, you shoplift, you know what I mean? And this guy's going out there doing this stuff practically on a weekly basis. He has a heart of stone, like a cold, what's that running through your veins? Like a ice water running through your veins. Character like this. This is a good time. Yeah, right. This is a good time to take a little commercial break. We are with Polly Franks. She's written a book called Devil at My Door, and it's about this character. She actually knew him, friends with the guy, Joseph Frank Smith. Their kids played together, had dinner together, stuff like that. So we'll be right back with more of Polly Franks after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors.
Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.